Hi, I am Rabbi Mendel Kastel, and welcome to Navigating Antisemitism, a practical podcast that opens up real conversations about how antisemitism is showing up in everyday Australian life. We'll explore how antisemitism impacts identity and everyday safety through 5 key themes: health, support, resilience, education, and awareness, and how we can respond with strength, support, and care. Across the series, we'll hear from community voices, experts, and advocates to better understand what's happening in our communities and how we can work together to create safer, more inclusive spaces for all. Welcome to another episode where we're talking about anti-Semitism and how we can support people who might be experiencing anti-Semitism and discrimination. Particularly, we're talking today about children and young people, and it's great that we've got Rabbi Gad Krebs, the rabbi of Moriah College, one of the largest Jewish day schools. It's great to have you as our guest today, Rabbi Krebs. Welcome.
Thank you, Rabbi Kastel.
Tell us a little bit about you and your work in the community, so we got a little bit of context and get to know you as we get into the program.
Okay, thank you very much. My role, as I see it, is being almost a community rabbi within the school community. So trying to connect with as many people as possible, create a very positive relationship with them in Judaism, and to be a positive role model within the school and beyond in the community as a whole, and try to bring some of those ideas from the college into the community.
And you're doing some chaplaincy with disaster recovery as well?
So I am a disaster recovery chaplain. I have had a number of events that I've gone to: bushfires, floods, hurricanes, and the like. Of late, when I was a community rabbi, I had a lot more time on my hands to be able to take off a day here and there to be able to go to different things, something which I don't have at the moment. So I actually haven't been deployed recently. I think the last time I was deployed was with you, Rabbi Kastel, at the airport to welcome everybody that had taken the flights out of Israel on October 7th. So that was my last deployment, but I am officially still a chaplain. Yeah.
Right. So you have a really good understanding, and it sounds like you've got a great relationship with the children and young people and their families. So you're in a unique position to be able to really understand how the kids are responding or experiencing anti-Semitism and what it means to them. And, so give us a little bit of a picture of what it is like for students at a Jewish day school. And then we might talk about students in other schools where there are other kinds of challenges.
As far as children in the Jewish day school, I can talk about Moriah. I can't talk about the other schools. Moriah has successfully, I believe, really created a very insular cocoon of safety and of support during the last couple of years, albeit that there's a very heavy security presence outside the campus. And I think the broader community, if they would drive past Fortress Moriah, as they call it, it looks very intimidating from the outside. And unfortunately, it's born out of necessity. But when the kids come into the school, it is very much, there's a lot of love here. There's no fear of any form. And we have created multiple opportunities throughout the school, including the preschool, to be able to, in a age-appropriate way, talk about events taking place both internationally and locally, to be able to understand on the more on the higher levels, to be able to navigate things of regarding anti-Semitism and the situation in Israel. And to be able to, we've been very privileged in being able to have a number of guest speakers. Virtually every organization that brings speakers out from Israel or anywhere else, Moriah becomes one of the stop points on their journey. So we get exposure to enormous amount of very inspirational, very articulate speakers who can come and share some of the perspectives and ideas. And I think in that regard, October 7 has been very front of mind in Moriah. It is part of our tefillahs every day. We daven for the hostages, and once a week we have whole school prayers where we deal with these. And we've had a number of different assemblies and services and events that have come either to support Israel or to support, or commemorate or to daven on behalf of Israel. So it's very, very, front of mind over here. And beyond that, we try to upskill our kids, not only in being able to give them talking points and understanding of why people are saying some of the very harsh critics and critiques that are out there, both towards Israel and towards the Jewish community as a whole, how to navigate them, how to respond on social media, and how to answer questions that might come their way. So, we're doing as best as we can throughout, each year group to make sure that they are as well equipped as they can be at that age to face that which is waiting, unfortunately, on the outside.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, the school is very much a cocoon, but on the way to school or when they're out shopping or with friends, have you found that, kids are experiencing sometimes quite subtle anti-Semitism, but do experience, people hurling anti-Semitism, as well as, things that they're hearing in the media that might affect them as well. So what are you finding with the kids?
So there have been a number of incidents that have taken place, whether they have been heightened, meaning that, the way school buses are, regular in New South Wales buses. So people can get on them, and there have been incidents that people have gotten on buses and made intimidating comments, and there's been quite scary for some of our students, and those have been all navigated, handed over to a combination of the CSG and the New South Wales Board of Deputies to be able to deal with various anti-Semitic events that have taken place. We have never, and we've been very clear, I know that other schools around the world and possibly throughout the country have had people not wearing school uniform outside of school, so they should not be visibly identifiable as Jewish students from a Jewish school. Moriah has not had that at all. We have at no point have we ever told the students to do anything different. And that's been very much our security protocol, is that we are Jews and we are proud to be Jews, and we will do everything in our power to ensure that students can feel safe and that they should not feel intimidated or scared into hiding their identity. So we at no point have ever done or said anything that would tell them to do otherwise. There are always going to be incidents on sports fields, in public arenas, but to the best of my knowledge, and I have, I only know that which is brought to my attention. And one event is one event too much, and one incident is one incident too much. But that being said, is that there haven't been a huge amount that have been brought to my attention of kids really experiencing enormous amounts of anti-Semitism face to face. I think what is the intimidating area is that spate of events that took place last year with graffiti and fires and car bombs in Woollahra and in southern Sydney, and spray painting, and every day it was almost like waking up to see what's going to happen. So there, especially in the younger years, there was a certain level of angst around. It wasn't. We spoke about it. We addressed it. It didn't feel like it was a paralyzing fear, but it definitely there was heightened alert that people were aware that we are not. Here in Australia, we are not immune. And so people are very cautious and conscious of the sentiments out there. I think people would walk around still very visibly Jewish, but not as visibly Zionistic as they might have been once upon a time. So I think people will be very hesitant. They might have their yellow badges, they might have their Magen Davids and even their kippot. I'm not sure anyone would have a badge with an Israeli flag on or anything of that anything of that sort.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, the wearing of kippah and tzitzit. I mean, you and I look, we look like rabbis, we.
Speak for yourself. I don't think I look rabbinic at all.
You wear kippah, you wear tzitzit, what I mean? You're proudly Jewish. For the students, some of them, or their parents, and particularly those who, have grandparents or Holocaust survivors, do you find that some of them are expressing concern around wearing a kippah or tzitzit or a Magen David or a chai or those kind of things going forward? I understand the school doesn't tell them not to, but are you finding that there is some concern, particularly in some families who it brings back, past trauma?
It hasn't been my experience. Again, I can only talk of my experience. In the Moriah community, there's been an enormous amount of pride and defiance. Now, I would never say this in a with a sense of pride, but there are a number of the teachers who got very Jewish tattoos in the aftermath of events. Now, tattoo being very much against Jewish law, but the sentiment of defiance there, of that I'm going to actually body paint something very visibly Jewish in my life. And I think with the kids, there's been a certain element where kids that never wore mugger individuals are now wearing them, and kids that weren't. So I find that there's a lot of that where kids are leaning into the challenges of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. So I haven't experienced parents coming, in the primary school. I think there was, right at the beginning, there was a lot of concerns, mainly in the primary school, not in the high school, but in the primary school where parents were a bit concerned. And I know our principals went out onto the street to greet the parents as they drove past, just to show that that we are there and that we are going to make sure that we are very visible and we're not going to hide away, and we're going to be very present. From being married to a grandchild of Holocaust survivors and the like, is there fear? Is there concern? Yes. Has it come to the point where people are feeling paralyzed, housebound, have to hide their identity? I don't think Moriah has created that, and we've been able to support anyone who's gone through that to the point that it doesn't come up as a major issue. I haven't experienced it as a major issue over the last 2 years. I haven't been hearing about people that are scared to go out there. There are people, again, not because they're Pollyannaish and think that everything's going to be okay, but there's almost a feeling that we will defiantly live our Jewishness, even though it might meet some opposition. So that has been my experience over here with the students in the college. There's an enormous amount of Jewish pride, enormous amount of Israel pride, and even the concerns they have out there. When we do hear of events taking place, they are quiet and humbled by them, but not frightened by them. I'm not experiencing.
Now, for many kids, it's the first time that they've really come face to face with either direct anti-Semitism or the concept of anti-Semitism. And while the older kids, are taught a lot about the Holocaust and its history, but some of the younger kids, for them, it's sort of the first time, as a rabbi and a mentor to so many of these kids, what would be some of the tips as to how you might raise these kind of issues, talk it through, so to be able to reassure these young kids?
So I think that in the younger years, there are a couple of areas you need to use. And anytime something comes up, we go straight to CSG and the Board of Deputies. So these are not something that we try manage in-house. As far as an individual who's feeling scared, so we are blessed in having a very strong pastoral care team over here. We have a number of psychologists that work on site that are full-time in both the high school and the primary school. To be able to hear what they're saying and to be able to create, the forum to be able to, if there's fear, to be able to hear the fear and to be able to navigate it appropriately. To the best of my knowledge, I don't know anyone whose life has been upended by various things of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. There are people who have now just look at it with being real that this is something that we have to navigate, and we have to deal with it in a very mature way, but not in a way that is being frightening. I think in the younger years, if I look at them, is that we try and protect them as much as possible. So especially in the lower primary years, when big events have happened, for example, when the Bibas children and their mom were brought back. So we try and navigate it in a way where we don't talk about it openly, well, what happened, but just acknowledge the fact that sad things are happening within the Jewish community. And as a Jewish community, we all grieve together, and we can be sad together, and sometimes we're scared together, but we strengthen each other, and we're able to, through each other's strength, we can build and be stronger as a community. And
if you're talking to kids, say in non-Jewish day schools and public schools or private schools, about how to navigate some of these things, what would you sort of say to Jewish kids in those schools as to how to help navigate day-to-day sort of conversations?
So the child themselves needs to have a certain level of resilience. That if you're in a hostile environment, how do you pick up the psychological tools to give you the strength and ability to be able to go to school with your head held up and not have to cower away in the corner? So is that answers? The vast majority of anti-Semitism that I'm hearing coming on the streets it's very superficial. These are not well thought out people who have, come through, all the sources and have read, very, thoroughly on the topic and come up with the anti-Semitic conclusions. These are people that their ideas are quite simple. They find an opportunity to pick on someone based on either an emotional crutch. They saw a video that they found quite horrific, and you, the person they're lashing out at, or they just finding a reason to. Your point of difference is that you are Jewish, and that's the opportunity how they will use to bully you, as they would do it to somebody who was ginger or somebody who was different any other way. And so to be able to say that, to argue with these people, I think is a waste of time and a waste of one's energy. To convince people that are making very snide anti-Semitic comments that, the reason you hate the Jews is because you don't understand us, I think you're barking up the wrong tree. So it's about building the resilience and to say, like, people are going to say horrible things, and you need to be able to, maintain your integrity and dignity when people say those things. But that being said, is you need to make sure that you go to whatever lengths it is that these things are stamped out. So we would never handle homophobia within a school. We wouldn't handle racism within a school, and you shouldn't handle anti-Semitism within a school. And if the head of the year group or the head of the school is not dealing with it, so then you got to take it up a notch. And that's where you need to lean into the board of deputies and other services, that they can come where they will fight those fights where the family themselves feel that they've gone to the principal shrugs his or her shoulders and says, well, I've spoken to the parents, there's not much more I can do. Bullying happens on the playgrounds. That's the way it is. So I'd say, no, that's when you need to go and you need to bring in the big guns. And that's what the Board of Deputies' role is, and that's what they should be doing.
No, absolutely. And if you're talking to parents, the kids are on social media, they're watching the news, they're getting it from all different directions, they're hearing all these different opinions. What's your advice to parents as to how to best strengthen their kids and work through some of these messaging and things that the kids might be experiencing?
So social media is a huge challenge that anyone will tell you is try to get your kids off social media. But I think that horse is already bolted. As a parent, you cannot delegate the responsibility of educating your children to social media. You need to get involved. So that means having conversations. It means if you don't have the information yourself, is being able to connect with various sites and various groups, like, for example, Unpacked. So there's an Unpacked, which is an educational organization based out of Israel and America that deals with Jewish questions on Israel, Judaism, Zionism, and the like. And it can just give answers, because if all you're seeing all day is that Israel are genocidal maniacs that are starving Gazan children and just want to kill them all, and that's all your feed is telling you. So it's a matter of time before you start believing it. And if everyone around you is saying that thing, and all the news seems to be saying that thing, so best case scenario, you're going to have a child that says, I feel uncomfortable supporting a genocidal country. Worst case scenario is your child switches teams and says, I'm an anti-Zionist. So the only way you're going to fight that is with education. So understand that the media's role is not to tell the truth. The media's role is to make a living. And by making a living, you need to sell news that sells. So we need to educate our children. And so we have to do the research. We cannot relegate or, remove the responsibility from our own shoulders. We need to make sure that our children have what they, have is as much information at their fingertips, not even to argue with people, but to be able to, in their own minds, to be able to, when you see these headlines and when you see these comments, that you can sleep at night knowing that this is at best a perspective, but at most likely a very distorted perspective on the situation, and we have another perspective. And it's very important that is told not told as just parental propaganda, but is backed up with facts, with articles, from legitimate sources about what's going on. So, like a good example would be, we just had recently out in Sydney, Hillel Noyer from the UN Watch, which is showing that just because the UN, the United Nations, says something doesn't make it the moral, benchmark of society. The United Nations is also morally corrupt. And that's, and being able to understand those things, that does, the things that Israel has been accused of, even if they were true, are we the only people doing this in the world? There's an inordinate amount of emphasis and highlighting of Israel over and above everything else in the world. And people need to understand that and need to be able to articulate that to their children so that their children understand it themselves.
There's a lesson in here also for us how we behave towards other minorities, other people generally. We know anti-Semitism is destructive, it's hurtful, it's wrong, and similar with regards to any kind of prejudice or discrimination. Is that something that we should really take out of what we're experiencing at the moment to be able to strengthen our kids and teach them the importance of being kind to everyone and respecting everyone?
So one of the things that we try to emphasize and re-emphasize is understanding that as Jews, we are ambassadors. We're ambassadors to Hashem, and we are ambassadors to the Jewish people. That when a Jew behaves well or misbehaves, is not reflective in the world as that person is good or bad, but is reflective on our community as a whole. So every time we do something, we need to be very aware that we are representative of a community. So being kind and being, sensitive to those around us is not just that people will hopefully come around and say, oh, this was a very nice, kind person, and they happen to be Jewish, but hopefully it reflects very much on the Jewish community as a whole, that this is our ethos, that this is what we believe. So us being very much sensitive and role models of what good, ethical, moral people be, we are hopeful that that imparts itself on other people and would make things like anti-Semitism as bad a word as homophobia and as racism. All we can do is do the lobbying, do the education as a whole, but we need to do work within our own community to make sure that we can navigate that anti-Semitism, because no matter how well we educate the world, no matter how kind we are, there are always going to be people out there that for reason and ration and logic, or just for pure bigotry, are going to be anti-Semitic. And we need to ensure that that doesn't stop us being who we want to be, both in the things we contribute to society as a whole and as in our morals in particular, that we can hold our head up with a certain level of integrity, regardless of how the world treats us.
Absolutely. And I guess that ties into how do we strengthen our kids, so some are feeling maybe at the moment I should dull down a bit my Jewish identity, or not be so proud to say that I'm Jewish. What can we do to be able to strengthen Jewish pride? And I think the other aspect that's really important is the concept that we're all Am Echad, Lev Echad, that particularly at a time where some might be more isolated or struggling, that we are there for each other. We're proud of who we are. And part of being proud of who we are is to be able to bring in others, for them to be able to feel that energy and that pride and that sense of belonging.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly with that. That the more we can reach out, the more we can reach in to our community, the better. I think that my experience has been is that one of the tragic upsides of the last 2 years is that Jewish identity has ironically been embraced. It's sad, I say it's tragic is that it's sad that it takes tragedy for people to step into Judaism. But I think that is one of the positives that have come out of this very dark period, is that the Jewish identity is stronger than I think it was 2 years ago at the same juncture. I think Jews are feeling more connected, and they're feeling more, and they're not using the anti-Semitism as an excuse to jump out of Judaism, but they're using it as an opportunity to lean in. And I think that is something that is a tragic but nevertheless positive outcome of the situation.
And how about encouraging kids who are, if you like, in the bubble, to be able to bring in those outside the bubble, and particularly, in the past, kids who are in a particular school sort of are part of that school and the others are outside. But here's really an opportunity that we're all part of Am Echad to really reach out to kids that you might live in your street or that you come across in sport and those kind of things, to really bring them in and strengthen their resolve and their pride.
Listen, I think that's a very good idea. I can't say that we have done that in any meaningful way. I think over the last couple of years, there's been a real sense of circling the wagons and making sure that we can all be safe and secure within our own environments rather than reaching out. But I think we have come to a point where if you only look inwards indefinitely, that's not a positive thing. So I think that is a very important point that you make, and I think there is something very valuable in being able to reach out and to look beyond our own community, in our own insular community, and to reach out. Listen, I think there's a lot of kids that have, through various sports clubs and other socials, that there is intermingling with others, but I don't think beyond, let's call it the coincidental, mingling. I don't think there's anything intentionally done. And I think that's it's an interesting and I think important point that you make.
And if you had a message to other schools, the public schools, the private schools, as to what they can do to be able to make students feel more safe and how to sort of push away any sort of sense of anti-Semitism, what would you say to those principals or those school leaders?
I don't think Jews are expecting different behavior. We're just expecting consistent behavior. So if a child were to make a homophobic comment, what would the result be for that? Would that child be suspended? Would that child be expelled? How would they be treated? What would be done? And then that should be exactly the same as for an anti-Semitic comment. There shouldn't be this idea that somehow anti-Semitism is a lower level of racism and should be treated with, listen, it was just a slight comment. We would never accept that. In the 21st century, we would not accept racism. We would not accept homophobia. These things we are very clear. And anybody who to do that, if there was a parade in Sydney that said, instead of death to Israel or Jews or terrorists or something along those lines, it said something about any other minority group, it would be absolutely intolerable. And I think from a teacher is that, from a school system, is that your Jewish students, like every other student, should be heard and listened and supported. When they come and say, this is what's happened to me, there shouldn't be a distinction that somehow the Jewish, they've got their shoulders are broader. They can handle it more and we don't need to deal with it. I think it needs to be dealt with the same level of severity, because otherwise we are creating a system of a two-tier system where there are levels of racism and there's levels of anti-Semitism. And since this hasn't met the threshold, you just need to get over it. I think that has to be an intolerable situation. We need to have that intolerance of any form gets treated exactly the same, and we don't make excuses for it.
Yeah, absolutely. When thinking of some resilience or some of the acts that some of the students might have done to really, I guess, support each other or to work through or against some of the discrimination, hate, anti-Semitism, is there anything that sort of jumps out at you at some incredible courage or things that students have done, or some of the things that they might be doing in the community to be able to be supportive and turn the tide on some of these things?
Listen, I don't know if there have been any initiatives per se that going out in any major way. I do think that there is a general sense of holding your head up with pride that they were able to do it out there, outside the walls of the school. And that people, I think just that for me has been the remarkable. I would imagine if you were to say to someone, if everybody's bullying Jews and there's this enormous amount of anti-Jew, anti-Israel sentiment out there, how do you think people would respond? And my sense is I would say, well, people would probably hide their Judaism. And the fact that hasn't happened, and the opposite is true, that people have become much more wearing their Judaism on their sleeve and being very clear of that and doing it in a very Jewish way. I think that, I would say, has been the most uplifting element of anything. It wasn't the fact that they are doing something, they're just being different. They're being more visually Jewish. The kippah doesn't come off the head quite as quickly as it used to. And I think there's a certain element of defiance there. This surge of anti-Semitism has created has awoken a certain dormant spark within the Jewish people that has said, we are, this is who we are, and we are not prepared to hide away from it. So I'd say that for me has been the biggest change. And that's the irony, is that the complacency of peacetime has been put to the side, and a new awakening of Jewish pride has come as a result of the anti-Semitic rhetoric that we hear throughout.
So on that point, you as the college rabbi, you've been doing it for a little while and playing other roles in the community. Are you seeing that your role is changing in the face of what's going on in Israel and some of the things that the community has experienced over the last couple of years? How do you see your role changing in relation to connecting with the kids, what you're trying to achieve with the kids, and your overall role in the school community, providing that support, guidance, and mentorship?
In this specific area where I've tried to position myself is to be able to put words to the feelings that people are feeling. So through various communal addresses that I've given, so from October 9, which was the day we came back to school, to be able to somehow put to words what people are feeling, and to be able to give a very traditional Torah-based understanding of the situation and be able to see things with the broadness of Jewish hindsight, that we are 3,500 years in this journey, and we are resilient people. A second thing is to be able to stand up and to almost try and be that figure of defiance, that I can show vulnerability, I can cry when I speak in public, but not crying out of weakness, but crying out of sadness and crying out of resilience. And to be able to, reach out when I go speak in different shuls and communities and community events, is to show the unflappable nature of Jewish faith, is that Hashem is with us and we are not alone. We are not alone. Even if the world is at times against us, or at least parts of the world against us, we are not alone. We always have Hashem on our side. And so long as our leaders of our community are standing up and are not quivering at the knees, I think that in of itself gives a very powerful message to our community. And I think that is our role as leaders, whether it be rabbinic or otherwise, is to be able to stand up and say, we're not scared. We are nervous, we are concerned, but we're not scared, because ultimately we're living by the values that we are teaching. We're not just preaching them. We're not just doing things. We are really living by the example.
Absolutely. So at a school, even it's a Jewish day school and it's a bubble, etc., but not all your staff are Jewish, and they come from different backgrounds. So what's sort of the messaging to non-Jewish staff? And then we might talk afterwards about non-Jewish students or community people more broadly. But let's talk about staff in the school. What the message to them? What can they do to be more supportive and to be able to make the students really feel that they're supported and cared about, particular, at this time?
So we do offer educational opportunities over lunchtimes and various staff sessions to be able to answer questions that they might have. There are staff that are very uncomfortable, and they have their own challenges of working in a Jewish school and what they suffer at times at the hands of their peers and friends outside the school. How can you work in a school like that? And the vast majority of the staff has been incredibly supportive and loving and understanding, both of the kids in the school, but in the Jewish community and Israel as a whole. So that's what they've been doing. We are trying as best as possible that staff are not political experts, and no staff will have conversations of this nature in their especially if you look into the social sciences, they do not have conversations about this, and opinions are kept to themselves. So that's how we navigated in here.
So what are some of the positive things that teachers and staff can say to students, to sort of give them that feel that we're with you, we're there for you, we're proud of you, or whatever it is? Is that what if I was to ask you, what is something? I'm a staff member. I want to be able to make the kids really feel that support. What would I do? I
think to just care. I think that is number one, is that you care. And especially for those staff members that are struggling themselves because they're seeing so many different things on media and they don't know. At the end of the day, if somebody is suffering, we have a responsibility as everyone has a responsibility, but as a teacher, as a carer in general, it's just to allow that person to feel what they're feeling in a non-judgmental way. So that's where non-Jewish staff, and I think Jewish staff as well. So I don't think every Jewish staff is intrinsically has the skill set to be able to support students doing this. But they need to be aware of it. They need to be supportive and to be able to listen to the students when they have it. And then they need to be able to, guide them towards and if necessary, literally take them to go get that help that they need.
And how about if I'm a non-Jewish student in another school, and I know that, some of the Jewish kids or my neighbor's kid or etc. What would be a message to them or to their parents to say, what can I do to be able to show some compassion or show some warmth or concern at a time like this?
If you meet someone that you sense is isolated, so this is a only Jewish kid at a particular school, that's your neighbor, or just whatever the situation is, that there's someone who feels isolated, they feel alone, reaching across and just saying, you're not. And if I can be here to support you. When there are people feeling disconnected and alone, everyone's got a responsibility, whether it's regarding anti-Semitism or just everything, elements of life, is when you see people that are alone, reach out to them, show some love, show some compassion, and just be there to listen.
Terrific. Rabbi Gad Krebs, thank you so much for sharing your insights, your continued support to the students, the families, and the community as a true leader. I appreciate that you've taken time out of your busy schedule and to share your insights, and for that we're truly grateful. We at Jewish House will continue to support the community. If there's anybody who is struggling or needs support, feel free to reach out to Jewish House, to our crisis line 24/7, or go to our special page supporting people who are experiencing antisemitism, navigatingantisemitism.org.au. Thank you very much. Toda rabah.
Thank you very much, and have a wonderful. Thank you for inviting me, and B'atzlacha should be successful in all your work.
Thanks for listening to Navigating Antisemitism. Antisemitism isn't always loud, but it is real, and it affects lives in ways that deserve to be seen, heard, and understood. Let's keep the conversation going and work together to build safer, more informed communities. To access support, explore resources, or learn how to take meaningful action, please visit navigatingantisemitism.org.au.